Well, howdy, folks, and welcome back to another episode of Follow the Leader. I'm your host, Lee Larson, and joining me from Bay Area, California. Ooh, this is going to be a fun one, y'all. Stephanie Jones, welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's good to see you.
Absolutely. It is great to see you. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to come and talk to us about being a naturalist, being a spiritualist, being a Bible study leader, being a coalition builder. Y'all check out this bio. Not only is she a certified California naturalist and a Bible study leader, as mentioned, but she describes herself as a work in progress at walking slower to notice the world. Her job is project coordination. Her interests involve carrying 30 pounds of stuff through the wilderness for days, and she once used a spoon to unlock her car. Wow. Stephanie, that's a heck of a description. Talk to us about your walk with faith and your walk with nature, how that leads you to carrying 30 pounds of stuff in the wilderness and unlocking spoons and cars. Like, was this something that was always a part of you or something that kind of came later in life?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. And I don't know that I've ever fully connected the through line of how I grew up to where I'm at with nature today. I grew up in the North Woods of Minnesota, so lots of pine trees, lots of lakes. That was just like being in nature was a part of everyday life. And I also grew up in a family where faith was very important and built into our family culture. Now, my relationship to both of those things has gone through many twists and turns through life, um, through living overseas, going to college, gaining life experiences. I would say that I was not great at noticing nature until like late post college into being an adult. Um, Even if it was a part of I think it was just this is gonna sound like an excuse, too much a part of, just my normal background noise to, fully appreciate it. Um, but, yeah, I grew up in a place that I loved and was beautiful and, enjoyed being outside. Um, when my husband and I moved to California, to the Bay Area, I always thought, given my love for water, that I would become an ocean Californian. And I do love the ocean, and the first year we lived here, I made sure, every month we went to go see the ocean. But I've become such a mountain Californian because I don't love driving through all the people, um, to get to the ocean, and it's a little bit longer, but way easier to get up to the mountains and to the lakes up there. So, through that exploration and just exploring this beautiful place that we moved to, I came home one day and I said, "Hey, how do you feel about, trying backpacking for the first time?" And so, our first backpacking trip was 6 days out. So, we're just gonna jump in to to that, and that was a beautiful experience, of just, there is something and this is gonna sound maybe elitist, but, there is something beautiful about seeing a place that you can only get to by walking there,
Mhm.
and, just how
Yep,
you experience and
yep.
interact with the environment. But I would say that being a naturalist is almost antithetical to being a hiker or a backpacker. It depends on how you go out, but I learned the slow pace of naturalist, isn't always the same as, I'm a backpacker who needs to get 30 miles up trail.
Right. Right, and that is true. The naturalist is letting things unfold as it goes, but you've got safety. You've got a and it's not like just a goal you wanna go see the top or whatever, like, you might have daylight, you've got weather, you've got, there's other animal
Yeah,
there's real things,
yeah.
and so it is interesting you talking about that specific part of it because there is the go out and enjoy the wildflowers and just sit by the river and journal or, stroll in the forest kind of thing that you're
Yeah.
talking about. And then there is the, we've gotta go and,
Well, yeah, and when you're carrying, food for so many days and
yeah,
the only way to get more food is to get out,
yep,
you
mhm,
gotta walk.
you gotta walk, yeah. No, and, it'll 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 push you. I've done just yeah. Talk to me about where you've done some of these backpacking trips, and is it you and you're going out with groups, and is it or just you and your partner? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, it's um it's been different groups over the years. My partner and I do a lot of backpacking. It's usually led by like I'm the one that initiates the like planning of it. So we've done the Lost Coast, excuse me. We've done Sequoia National Park. We've done hike backpacking trips in Yosemite. I led a Girl Scout troop on their first backpacking trip, which was really so fun.
Yeah,
And that was just in a local like regional park here. I had done the research on where to go, and it was so fun to like help them prepare for it and answer
yeah.
any questions they had. Like talking with a group of women in the wilderness of like, how do you deal with like menstruation when you're out for a month? And yeah, it was just so I've done that, and then I've also, like, a couple summers ago, I did my first solo trip because I just no one else had time and I wanted to do it, so I did it.
Ah, that's awesome. Was that also in California?
It was, yep.
Oh,
It was
that is
just a
so
section in the Sierra.
that's so special. That's so special and empowering too. When you're out there, I know we've kinda talked about this faith back and forth, but how has some of these, like, endurance or, larger trips, how have you seen God, or how has, like, how has that worked with you? So I know that I'm
Yeah,
bumbling over this
yeah,
question a
no.
bit, uh, but really, I mean, some of these you talk about walking, and it is beautiful to get where you're going, but it's also hard, and, there are low days and low times, and how have you seen nature and God show up?
Yeah, there was, on our first backpacking trip, um, I was listening to an audiobook every day. I mean, I was listening to many things and singing out loud and doing whatever you can to distract yourself. But I was listening to a book from a woman who has a Christian background, and it was the book was called "What Sounds Fun." That sounds fun. That sounds fun. I think is what it was called. But it was all about like finding joy in being an amateur, and like and she connected it to a lot of like the Eden narrative. So it felt very applicable to the situation that I was in. But there was something on day 3 when you're climbing so many granite staircases and just like elevation and elevation and elevation, and it's hot and you've got 30 pounds on your back and it's hard to
Mhm.
be like, there is joy in like, this is what you get to do. Or what you've chosen to do. And it doesn't have to mean something like bigger. I'm not doing it for content, but just like, reconnected. So that was a really hard, like, emotional day for me on that particular trip, and just to be reminded, like, that I get to do this, that God I was listening to through the Psalms also on that trip, and just connecting, like, there are low points, and it's okay when there's low points, that God is still present. And to look around at the nature and creation to see, like, where He's given care to places. um, the other time that, like, and this is kind of like what kicked off my idea of, like, what can we learn about God from nature is, um, there was one time we were going to Joshua Tree National Park, and, which is about an 8 to 10-hour drive from here, and on our drive down, well, suffice to say, it was kind of a wreck of a trip. There was a lot of wind, and in the in Joshua Tree in the campgrounds, you can't tie your tent to Joshua trees, so it's like sand or rocks. There was a lot of wind. It was a very hard trip, and in the middle of that, I was reading an interpretive sign, and it was talking about how Joshua trees grow branchless, and they don't get another branch or even have a flower until it goes through this, like, cold, hard frost. Like, it
Mm,
basically kills some of the cells that creates that new growth, and I was like, "Doesn't God do that sometimes where, like, out of out of hard seasons, there is an opportunity for new growth?" And I would never tell someone in a hard season, like, "Just so you know, like,
right,
there's a
right, right.
chance to flower from that." Like, that's not That's not what I'm about. But I think like in for one's own self to think through like
Mm.
there's something really beautiful of about the Joshua tree, and how God has created this process of flowering through cold, hard seasons.
I wanna echo that back, 2 different stories in the same vein, though. I spent last summer 2 months in Pakistan working, it was a humanitarian girls' education, women's work, but it is a very, very hot and dry country, but they do have some of the sweetest fruits I've ever the mangoes were the best I've ever had in my life, and, like, it is a hot, hard country economically, socially, they got all there are a lot of things going on over there, but it was just, like, it was, like, spiritual to sit there on the stoop, like, sit there on the stairs with a Pakistani friend and, like, eat a good peach and just be like, just friendship and good fruit, like or
Yeah.
just, and also back in the United States, Colorado, that cold snap you're talking about really impacts Palisade peaches, and it's what and I thought that was cool. That was a cool story. I was like, the cold
Yeah.
literally impacts Palisade peaches compared to, like, Georgia peaches or, these
Right.
other.
Yeah, you get a very it's a very different thing, and I like that for the peaches in particular that, like, it's not one climate, it you get different things. I mean, it's true for, like, Michigan cherries versus, like, Rainier cherries are very different, and I like that.
No. People are like, "Yes." The listeners that are like,
Yeah,
"Yes,
they're
guys.
like, "Yeah,
Different
there's a
fruits in different
difference."
places are." That's not what we're trying to
Groundbreaking.
say. It's about the story. It's about the story.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of things like that in nature. There's like pine cones. We think pine cones they open one every 1 to 2 years and release their seeds, but there's some tree species where the pine cone or the conifer cones stay closed until a wildfire comes through, and that could be 50 years in an area before the the wildfire and the heat of it comes and opens those seeds for dispersal, and they find growth in the nutrient ash from that wildfire.
that is so cool. Ah, we're nerding out about stories. That's like
I'm
beavers.
here.
Beavers, like, I am like like unsung heroes. I'm out here flying banners like, "Do you guys know how critical beavers are to ecosystems?" Like,
Yeah, and there's all the wildfires that are happening in northern Minnesota right now,
yeah.
and Emily Fairfax was like, "Here's, like, a beaver refugia," and, like, they have a tracking of a wolf that is, like, between fires just, like, camped down in the beaver refugia because it's the wetlands, and that's where they can stay safe between fires. It's like real-time
Whoa.
data of, like, a really cool story.
That is a really cool story. See, more good news. Like, just more good nature. I mean, we don't like the big wildfires as it relates to climate change, but, like, that is cool. But, so that is actually a good we're I wanted to return back to a little bit about a storytelling, but, you've done project coordination, and obviously we've been talking about naturalism and storytelling. How how did you know that you wanted to get certified, as a certified naturalist, and how does storytelling uh, I mean, I know we've touched on this obviously, but
Yeah.
what really drove you to that decision?
So my background, like from college, is marketing and communications. So I already have a little bit of, and I was an English teacher um, to Turkish students in Ankara, Turkey, for a couple of years, which really leaned on the communications and learning about your audience and how do you present something and teach something to them. Um, so that's always been a part of the work that I've done. And when I started noticing in nature things that we can learn about God. I, one, wanted to learn more about nature. And two, I wanna tell that story and connect people to it. And so become a certified naturalist, um, connecting people to science and nature is like mainly what it's about. It's not necessarily about like the correct identification of every single living thing that you see out your front door, but it's how do you connect people to that. Um, and so I thought that would be a really um, one. I'm a lifelong learner, so like anytime you can put me into a place that I can get a certification for
Yes.
learning, I'm down. Um, but yeah, it was just I wanted to be able to do justice to the connections that I was starting to see between creation and God, um, and connect to people in ways that like not what I think, but like how can I help you where you're at, um, notice that and help that. So I thought that's really where like becoming a certified naturalist came about, and I was very excited because it worked out to take in California, there's a lot of nonprofits that run naturalist certification courses, and it just happened to be that the the nonprofit that I chose to go through was one I was familiar with, had a history of coalition building, and worked with my work schedule. So it just felt like the right time to go get that certification from that organization in particular.
And since then, has that certification allowed you to do? What projects or opportunities have you seen with it?
Yeah, so I only became certified in March. So it's only been a short amount of time. I've worked with that nonprofit, Tuliomi, on their like event planning and coordination for a gala or like a yeah, like a gala that they host. I was already a volunteer in my local state park. Um, and I've just noticed that like the way that I can engage with public has changed and like how
Yeah.
I can encourage the public to engage with the nature that they're about to go out and witness has changed. But I'm still looking for like, yeah, opportunities. Like it's informed the writing in the book and the manuscript that I'm working on. But as far as like public facing opportunities, still looking for ways. There's a lot in California and the natural world and ways to connect. So I'm just looking for what's the best use of my resources.
Well, I also asked that because I recently got certified through the National Association of Interpreters. Um, but I wanted to do it because my background is in teaching and ministry, but there was a lot of either pulpit or a slideshow behind me and people sitting and writing. So that's a different style of public speaking that when I wanted to go out in the community, I was like, there's got to be better ways. And then I've been to enough campground talks when I go camping at national parks or state park, any of those that I've been like, you guys are so animated. How do y'all do that? And it's because they don't have the slideshow. They're not expecting the audience to write it down. It's a campground. It's a national, park rangers.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I was like, this is a whole gift of being able to communicate nature so and it's a lot of people who just want the highlights. Like give me 5 cool facts, but like in an animated way that I can and
Yeah.
just um and it's storytelling about nature in ways that hit home. And so again, when I came across your stuff, I was like, yeah, she's out here doing
Yeah.
it.
So like in the course or the certification that you did, what is one thing that you learned about like because for me, the thing that surprised me in becoming a naturalist in California in particular was I got real excited about a specific kind of dirt. And it's funny because I think animation, like you were saying, is a part of what connects people, and, like, I was surprised at how quickly I was like, "This dirt is so cool, this soil,"
Yes.
and it's based on, like, the state rock of California and where it came from, and so, like, what did you learn through your interpretive certification?
Well, the interpretive certification was more like how to teach or like how it was like a public ski. So it was not necessarily that, though I will say my thing, if everyone's got a thing, like is like um feathers and bones. Like I have feathers and bones around my house a lot. And trying to think if I have any down. I have rocks and seashells and stuff like that, but really into bones that I bleach and whatnot. but the one of the things that really stood out for me, was movement, like movement around the space, and again, coming from the podium or coming, the pulpit of academia or ministry, and then you don't get that. It's a different style of speaking, so, like, moving around the stage, which was kind of like, "No, my podium, my notes, my," and it
Yeah.
was like, "You don't get notes anymore." Like, it's like, now you're just telling stories around a campfire. And that's cool. It's but in an animated way, again, it's not
Yep.
sitting there talking,
Yep.
um, and you've gotta tell it to, and that was just cool. Movement and breaking away from the script or the island. Like,
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
shield, I'm like, "No, it's between me and the people," and they're like, "No." And it's was and it helped, like, in the past 2 times that I've given a public speech, I've actually, like, gone into the people, and it does change. It changes the whole dynamic of the public speaking event. And again, that is that's natural. Like, that standing up at a pulpit or podium, that's a very, like, cold intellectual way to do things. Going in and moving and, like, storytelling's as old as time, and we just forget that because we get so in our heads.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
so
and
yeah.
so there's part of it of, like, I wanna be a better storyteller because I think this is really neat, and I would like you to also think that this is really neat. But then also, like, how do you what are the I don't wanna say mechanisms because it's not as transactional as that, but, like, what are the hooks that, like, are gonna help connect people? So, like, the manuscript I'm working on when I tell people I wanna write a book about, like, what we learn about trees, what we learn about God from trees, they're like, "Oh, like the trees in the Bible," and I was like, "No, like the trees in your backyard, the ones that you can go out and touch and feel and, like, interact with, because that makes it real in a way that, like, I and there's plenty of cool trees in the Bible to talk about, and they've been talked about, but I want you to look in your backyard and be like, "Oh, that oak tree has this specific thing, and that reminds me of God or creation or whatever." You
They,
said bones and
oh,
just on the
yeah.
naturalist thing, one of the activities we did in class was to look at a skull of
Mm,
a coyote, and we had to figure out how they died.
yeah.
And it was fascinating just to because it was, again, like, the moving slow and asking nature, "What story are you telling here?" Was really fascinating, and I just really appreciated that that certification course.
There's a book, I don't see it, but I have it around here somewhere. It's called The Lost Art of Reading Nature Signs,
Yeah.
and that's a cool book. Hey, audience, go buy that book at a local bookstore. Uh, but,
Yes.
but it was really profound because it does get deep for sure, but, it is, like, if you wanna read the first, like, few pages of each chapter, it does get really cool. Just being able to find your way, just like things about the sun, the shapes of mountains, trees, like, you can learn quite a bit. I mean, one thing I learned was trees, if you're, if it's a still day, like no wind or something, and you can look at the trees and you can see, like, which way the wind typically blows because it's gonna be shorter on one side and longer on the other, and the shorter side's gonna be the one that's been resistant, like, facing the wind. And I was like, so, like, you can figure out if it's still now where it's like, and just, like, things like that, and I know some of my listeners are not as outdoorsy as, a backpacker like yourself, and they're like, "Why do I need to know which way the wind?" But you can practice this if you are living in an urban environment, you don't have the sort of resources and access to you live in Montana or go backpacking in the Sierras. There's really cool ways even to introduce this stuff to your children or other people in your lives that we can read stories from nature.
Yeah, and I like, my goddaughter, that lives in St. Louis the other week, I got a video call from them, and they had gone out on a like, they went out on a nature walk, and they came back, and they had a nature journal, which is funny because I was like, "I don't think I was the one that told you about nature journaling." and they, like, put in their nature journal, like, what they found, and it just said, like, stick, leaf, and I was like, "That's awesome." Like, like, me, when I'm putting things in my journal, it's like, "What kind of tree did this leaf come from?" But, like, I want you to interact with nature at your level, and your level is stick and leaf, and I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, like, it's not about and this is always like, I don't have a botany background. I just think trees are really cool, and, like, what do you think? Like, I go around asking everyone, and I'm going to ask you, "What's your favorite tree?" And so many times I've asked probably hundreds of people at this point what their favorite tree is, and some people have an answer right away, and some people say, "I don't think I have a favorite tree," and within 5 seconds, they have an answer. So I was like, "You do. You just didn't
Yes.
know it."
Yes.
So Lee, what's your favorite tree?
I split, so it was weird how my brain split because each of the trees meant something. And
Yeah.
it went pecan tree because I'm from Texas, baobab because I spent time in Botswana, and then, aspen because I and, like, they and then aspen's from, like, Colorado, Montana, but all 3 of those places, like, mean something significant to me, and I remember looking at the trees and being like, "This is a cool thing that specifically." I mean, yes, you can find pecan and aspen, you know what I mean? But, like,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was just very specific to the region in that moment, and aspens are cool with their underground root
They're
system. That is
so
so
cool.
cool.
Okay, so the camping trip that I went on my own, where I had to unlock my car with a spoon, was in Utah because I specifically was going to Pando, which is the heaviest organism on Earth, the 110 acres of technically one tree, and it's just thousands of, aspen I don't know, what do you call them when it's like they're trees, but it's one tree? Um, but that's
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. I don't it's like it's a re
All
I don't
all of the all of the trunks, and it was because I wanted to go see that aspen tree because I was like, "It's just so cool how it is clonal."
yes, yes. And fun fact, this is gonna out me. It's very Taylor Swiftian, but when I was camping in Colorado, I wrote a murder ballad about aspen trees because the knots on the trunks look like eyes. And so the murder ballad was, like, talking about how my only witness was those aspen eyes, I, like, buried a
Okay,
body in the
okay,
aspen
okay.
woods.
I don't care about this podcast anymore. I need you to release that. That's what needs to come from this.
Yeah. But it just, like, again, storytelling, I was like, "Those trees look like eyeballs," and
Yeah.
spooking me out, and I was like and I'm, like, just hanging out, but what if I was really guilty of something and, and I was like, "Murder."
Like murder.
Like, murder, and I was like, "This man cheated on me with the secretary, like, now he's getting buried in the woods and the aspens."
Nobody but me and the aspens know.
Right. So, anyway, sorry, audience,
No.
we took a hard turn there, but I want because that is the next question, hilariously enough, is what can we learn about the church and God from the trees? Not murder
So,
ballads.
not murder ballads, probably some other, good uplifting ballads. Yeah, and this kind of dovetails for me with coalition building. So I chose the Naturalist certification course with that nonprofit that I knew had a history of coalition building. And I think, particularly in our very fractured both church and political landscape, coalition building is becoming a diminishing skill. And I liked with that nonprofit that they created a national monument here in California, and they did it through coalition building, and I first heard about it in the book Enduring Wild by Josh Jackson. He spends years going to different, Bureau of Land Management land through California and telling stories of, like, underrepresented land, basically. And this national monument and this organization was a part of it, and they talk in his interviews about how they brought together a coalition of people who don't normally work together. Like backpackers aren't always in line with like the hunters or the people that are out on their ATVs in different places, but they worked very intentionally to bring together that coalition. So I thought that was really neat, and I wanted to learn about storytelling from someone who can do that well. And the reason that, like, for me, or where I see coalition building in the body of Christ is, um, again, from trees, like, did you know do you know about the mycorrhizal network? It's this underground, like, mushroom or, like, fungus, interconnected web in a forest, and the older the forest, the thicker and denser and better connected it is. Um, but what was fascinating to me about that when I was reading about it for the first time is, trees share resources back and forth, but it's not just like a Douglas fir to a Douglas fir, but, like, Douglas firs and birches, if they're in the same forest, will share carbon back and forth depending on which part of the year it is and who has more carbon to share. And I was like, isn't that what we're supposed to be like in the church? Of like, we have been blessed with resources and we can share it with others. And it does not always have to be like the other people who look and think and worship exactly the way that we do. But like, I think to be reflective of that is reflected in nature in that, like, the paper birches send carbon over to the Douglas fir, and then, in the autumn, the Douglas fir is like, "Hey, we've been photosynthesizing for a lot longer, so here's some resources back." And Paul writes about that in First Corinthians, he writes about it in Acts, or not Acts, in Romans. He talks about, we've all been given gifts, and we're all meant to function and use those for the common good. And yeah.
That is so
Let
beautiful.
me
That was a
the
sermon.
period.
Thank you. And that's all.
And done. Yeah, bye,
But
guys.
I mean, that first of all, the I'm really I wanna talk more about fungi in a second. Like, that's really cool. But yes, in this interconnected web, this, like, and really, like, the good and the bad. I had a conversation with someone today how hard it is because we were talking more not nature, but, like, geopolitical, war, colonialism, just, like, racism, sex we were talking about other thing and I was just like and it's we were describing how it's all where people are just so interconnected in our histories, like, so deeply that, like, even when someone would ask me, like, "How is Pakistan?" or, like, "Aren't they in conflict with something?" or, like, "What's going on?" How do you even start, to talk about thousands of years of history and, like, why people do and do not get along, and that's, like, also, like, so much with nature, like, it seems almost, like, so interconnected that you can't I mean, you can't. You're not it without anything else because it's all part of it, and, so absolutely beautiful, absolutely beautiful. You
Yeah,
said
there's
that book go ahead.
oh, I was gonna say there's, like, it's interconnected, and I think one of the things there's a lot to be said for, like you were saying, like, kind of on the colonial path of, like, when when we talk about wilderness, meaning a place where people aren't, and it's like people have been in these wild spaces a lot longer than we talk about. It's just we want it to be without other people. We want it for ourselves. So this
Mhm.
idea of one of the reasons that like my perspective shifted was just I was doing a nature writing course um and it was or even in my photography, in nature photography, of not removing the people from it. So if I'm at Yosemite and I'm taking a picture of like a very iconic view, I want the people in it because the people are there and the people have always been there. And I think like the further we get from being connected or recognizing that we've always been connected to nature, nature is not a thing that we go out and do. It's in our backyards. That's
Yeah.
that's like that's what I want is people to connect to you are a part of nature, you are nature, so let's protect it.
Yes. Absolutely, absolutely, that's beautiful. You brought up a book I think can you, share with some of us because I've gone through your Substack and folks, I really hope y'all explore this later, but you sometimes do book reviews, or in this particular one you do, you've talked about enduring wild. Can you share with us some texts or some perspectives, people that have influenced you along this naturalist journey?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking at my shelf because I've kept all of the books that I've read
Right.
from that.
Yeah. It's
um, Hands down, the one that I've read a lot of them. And so Writing Wild is kind of an anthology, but it's like really just introducing you to different people along the way, different women who've been writing about nature. It starts with Dorothy Wordsworth, who was the sister to William Wordsworth, who is a romantic poet in the Lake District in England. Very famous man. But it, Dorothy, like clearly through her diary, has helped him shape some of his. So anyway, so Dorothy Wordsworth, it's just reading her journal, and sometimes it gets real weird. I don't remember if I posted the one about Dorothy yet. I think it's on my Substack. Um, because you can see how she influenced her very famous brother's poetry without any credit. Um, but the one that I was reading through all these different women, and I wouldn't just read about their lives. I would go find their work and spend time reading the work before I moved on to the next one. And the one two in particular connected with me personally. One because the first one was Mary Hunter Austin, because she wrote about the pass that we crossed when we did our first backpacking trip. So she was explaining this lake, this green lake in this bowl, and I was like, I have a picture of that lake. And the thing that I loved about Mary Hunter Austin's work was she's writing in the desert, which coming from Northwoods, Minnesota, was not something I ever thought had life or was beautiful. And seeing the desert through her eyes and how abundant life is there was very meaningful, um, to see the beauty in the desert, and now I love it. Um, and then the other one was The Living Mountain by Nan Shepherd. She spent most of her life in Cairngorms in Scotland,
yeah,
north of Edinburgh.
yeah.
Um, and it felt the most similar to a like a it just felt like a fellow, like, soul, like, I if we had been like, if our souls would have connected
Wow.
if we had been able, so it just felt like writing that was could have co not could have come from me, because she had a whole life and experience that I don't wanna discount, but it felt the most similar to, like,
Yeah,
how I feel.
yeah.
So much so that when like, for my birthday last year, we planned a Scotland trip, and I specifically like, we went up to the Cairngorms because I wanted to connect to the place that Nan Shepherd had, like, loved so well. So the Living Mountain was a really beautiful piece of writing.
I have been to the Cairngorms.
Have you?
Yes, I was there 2 years ago, and I enjoyed it. Um, it was beautiful. I did a nice hike. That fog, they had some they, I wanna say they have reindeer or caribou in the national park, and it's, like, one of the few places, like, I think all of, the United Kingdom that there's reindeer or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, they still have their reindeer there. We parked, like, right next to where they kind of, like, you can go in and pet them, and they had really high fences so you couldn't see them without paying. But they
Yeah.
also wander. It's also one of the places that, like, the ancient Caledonian forest still has some old growth, because
Mm.
a lot of the highlands actually used to be forest, and a lot of it got cut. So the ancient, like the Scots pine up there, we went looking for some old growth Scots pine.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic.
My
Well, do
husband
you
knows that basically every trip we take now has something to do with trees at some point.
that is so cool. Well, and folks, this is like it's so critical. Grasses and trees, like I mean, and trees do get a lot of love. They do. They're big. They provide a lot. They provide a lot. Grasses really get overlooked, and I have to plug grasses while we're here, just because we've got grasslands out in eastern Montana. I'm sure you know this, or maybe I don't. I don't. But This whole area of the Dakotas, eastern Montana, Nebraska, that whole chunk of grasslands, folks, is, like, actually critical and is one of, like, the top 3 in the world, in terms of how necessary it is and, like, its ecosystem and how deep those roots go and what happens if that topsoil gets messed up, and, I think there's, uh one in Asia, and, it's like a I can't remember what the name of it is, but it's another grasslands that is so
Yeah, like
large
the
and
Asian
so deep.
steppe is
Yes,
yeah,
that's what you're talking. Yeah,
yeah.
and then there's a 3rd, and I don't know where the third. I it might I don't know, but I did not know that the American prairie, and that's what I learned while moving up to Montana, this American prairie, this whole chunk out here, it's like if you were to develop it, like, you would have cause, like, catastrophic, consequences to and, like, it would start with, like, a dust bowl and then it would turn into a wildfire, like, it's like big like, rolling
Well, and
effects, like
that's like here in California, a lot of what people see, especially in this time in the dry season, are these like golden hills. The golden hills of California is a lot of invasive grasses.
Mm.
And that's part of the reason that they're much more flammable because they're not meant to be here in this environment. And if the native grasses were allowed to come back, um, you get much more because when you have that thick root system, water is retained in the land so much more than with these native grasses that are easy to pull out and don't have a lot of roots and don't trap the water. And yeah. But I'm not great at identifying grasses yet. So that is one of the
Oh, that's
things
okay.
that is one of the things that I like
No.
is on my list of things to learn.
No, I appreciate that, and also to your point about sometimes in your nature journals, it can just be stick and leaf, like, it can just be grass, it can just be
Yeah.
flower, like,
Yeah.
and that's fine. I think the God part of it is us noticing, not necessarily us defining and researching, and, like, that's cool. Those are things that he it gives us, but sometimes it just is the noticing, so
Yeah, and that's like of all of the things that I take out of my naturalist class, and I learned a lot of really neat things, but like I always say like what I learned was to walk at the pace of a naturalist, which is slow. So that you notice and even in my day to day, I've got a friend who's a poet. His name is Tanner. And I have a sticker from one of his poems that just says walk a little slower. And I have it like stuck to the side of my like car. I'm not blocking any like significant I know what my gas tank says. I know what my speedometer says, but like to the side of my speedometer, I just have this little reminder of I you don't always know what people are dealing with. And so like if I'm rushing to some place or I get annoyed because someone cuts me off in traffic, like, I don't know what they're doing, so I just need to my reminder is to walk a little bit slower, thank God for the day, and that I have whatever gift of wherever I'm going to is.
that is so beautiful. I'm curious, looking ahead, what is next for you, or what are some of the things that are really driving you today, um, and how can we move forward?
Yeah, one of the things, the current, um, series that I've got going on my Substack is, I think I should know what I called it. Small talk is killing the church. Um, and it's this idea of to me, all of these things are connected. Nature and God and storytelling and coalition building and like how we become better is by these connections. And one of the things that has frustrated me over the years, I've gotten a lot of comments on my body as a woman in the church, as a pastor's wife in the church. I am highly visible in ways that not everyone is. And for a long time, and I put this in one of those posts, people would come to me and say, "When are you due?" And I was like, You're not even going to ask like if, you look at my body and you know, so you that's how you're going to start the conversation. And that was one hurtful for a long time, but also like I in trying to think of other people's experiences with it is how do we come without assumption to relationship, to coalition building, to whatever. So it's being curious about the other person without assumption. And actually, you had one of your guests recently. I wrote Chaplain Jared Anderson.
Yeah,
Um, he had a really good thing about like you don't know from someone's dog tags what they actually believe. You just know like kind of the flavor of what it was. And I thought that was directly in line with what I'm about, which is like being curious about them and asking and allowing them to tell their story. Um So that's my thing. My thing is like, how can we be curious, not just about nature, but about each other? Sorry, there's a hummingbird that's like aggressively looking in my window right now.
that's so
It's
beautiful.
very delightful. How can we be curious about nature? How can we be curious about each other so that we are building a better coalition? Um, and not that that we're all 100% on board or the same or anything. But I think knowing each other well involves setting aside assumptions. So, just examining ourselves. Like one of my highlights on my Instagram is just asking better questions. And whenever people have good questions, I posted on there. And today one was from Kate Bowler, who was instead of having a gratitude journal, here's 10 questions to ask yourself. And I found that fascinating because I'm always like, how do you ask other people better questions? But yeah, how do you ask better questions of yourself
Mm,
to get to know who you are, to get to know God? Yeah.
that's so beautiful. You are on a roll, Stephanie. I'm so excited you are sharing your voice with the internet, with the world, with all your knowledge, and it seems to be integrating, like, and alchemizing and really coming together, and I just continue to look forward to being in relationship with you online, and hopefully we can connect in real person for some content or something together.
Great.
Can you tell folks how they can learn more about your mind and your message?
Yeah, absolutely. I am most active on Instagram and Substack. My Instagram is, I mean, it's slowly two, but it's SLOLEE, the number two, um, on Instagram. And then I I know what my Substack is called, but I don't have the URL off the top of my head. Oh, it's the same thing. It's slowly, SLOLEE, no two, just slowly. And that Substack is really, it's called Recreation, Recreation Recreation, which is just a different way to say the same word. Because I think we are recreated through recreation in creation.
Beautiful. Wow, I so appreciate you coming on the episode today. This has been absolutely lovely, and folks,
This was a
let me
delight. Thank you for this.
yeah, absolutely. Folks, let me know in the comments what y'all thought. If y'all have any suggestions of authors or other points of view, just I mean, we talked about a lot of things. So let us know in the comments, like what resonated with you. You know the drill. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe. Ah, I know the creator. Help me survive. Yeah, well, it's
Yes,
real.
that's how we get to know each other.
Folks, this has been an episode of Follow the Leader. I'm your host, Lee Larson, and until next time, see ya.